Hi, and welcome everyone to Whole Soul School and Foundation's Fireside Chats for August 2021. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, intuitive life coach, and a co-host of this Fireside Chats podcast series. I am here today with Lacy Frazer, my fellow co-host, who is a clinical psychologist by training and a practicing life coach and consciousness educator today. I send a warm welcome to our listeners, and I always like to start off by sharing that our mission here at Whole Soul School and Foundation is to increase self-awareness, personal empowerment, conscious communication, transformation, and freedom in people worldwide through our good vibes broadcasting and consciousness teachings. We hold a core belief that these conversations are an education. And we invite listeners to visit our store at bonfire.com, where your purchases help to inspire you in your journey, as well as other people in this incredible Rising Heroes journey as well, because your purchases support us to bring more messages to people seeking change and a better life. So please check out our inspirational apparel there and have fun shopping to support our mission and the work we do, and we really, really appreciate your support. So welcome everyone, and I want to welcome Lacy to our Fireside Chats conversation today. Thank you for joining me.
Of course, I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited because we are going to take a few more steps in the Rising Heroes journey. We're going to highlight the next stage, which is meeting the mentor. And we're going to discuss some more insights around that today. So Lacy, why don't you start us off? Why don't you lead us into that conversation?
Well, absolutely, Marie. And kind of in true Lacy fashion, one of the things I love to do, because I'm always assuming that we've got new listeners, right, and that are hearing us for the first time.
Yes.
And I just want to reiterate that Whole Soul School and Foundation is really all about this conversation about the rising hero within. Mm-hmm. You know, it's about empowering each other and humanity in journeying this life as a spiritual being, having a human experience. And you and I have chosen to really organize our conversations around the hero's journey, which is a journey. It's the journey of the adventure of life that was really spelled out initially by Joseph Campbell, a famous mythologist. And so we've talked the last 4 months. We've kind of taken one stage at a time. And what I'd love to do briefly is to just review those first 3 stages, and then we will talk about meeting the mentor, just so we can bring everybody up to speed.
Please.
Sound good?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first stage of the hero's journey is called the ordinary world, okay? And this is really where the hero, which is us, right? Which is us. We've been living in our ordinary world called life. We've been doing life. And many of us have been doing life with this vague sense that there may be something missing from life. And we don't know what it is. You know, in fact, I have had many clients say to me, you know, Lacy, there has got to be something more to life than what I've been living. You know, and that statement really captures this first stage. We're in our comfort zone, we're in the ordinary world, and we have a sense that there's got to be something more. Mm-hmm. So at some point while we're living in our ordinary world, we begin to have an increased awareness that there is a possibility for change. There is a possibility for moving forward into something new in our life. And so now our vague sense that things could be different has actually moved into more of a knowing that things can be different, and that we actually can make choices to move in a different direction in our life, right? So when we talked about this initially, this really is the stage called the call to adventure. And we talked about, you know, it might be a call to a new job, a new relationship, a call to retirement, you know, or some other kind of big transition in our life. Okay, so that's sort of stage number 2 is this call to adventure. We're really sensing and feeling we want to move in a different direction. And then, Marie, in our last conversation, we really focused on the third stage, which is called the refusal of the call. So now we've been presented with some opportunities here to move forward, to step on a path to adventure. And what comes up? For most of us, what comes up in this next stage is fear, is doubt, is ambivalence, hesitation, and it can be very, very uncomfortable, but it is a critical stage because it often provides kind of those contrasting emotions that solidifies the hero's decision to answer the call by stepping on the path forward. Right. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And as you were describing that, and we spent some time in the last podcast talking about the refusal of the call. It's often a stage in our journeys that many are lacking the language for, and which means we can either misdiagnose it or misunderstand it,
yes,
or assign things to it that it really isn't. It is this very clear part of the journey where we are feeling this call to something new. We're feeling this call to adventure, to try something else, to break out of the familiar and our comfort zones, right? But then self-doubt and fear and the ego takes over because it's sounding the alarm bells that change is coming.
Right.
And that is something that it feels very threatened by.
Right.
So when we mistake the refusal of the call for a mistake, right, for something we're not supposed to be doing, or for guidance even.
Right.
It can be very confusing and unsettling, and a lot of people turn back. A lot of people say, well, I did want to do this new thing, or I was called to try another job, or, have this new relationship, or take a vacation and go somewhere new. Whatever the newness is, that call to adventure. The ego has all the language to give us because we've already practiced the language of what we've been. And the ego knows how to give us all the words that will talk ourselves out of taking those courageous next steps that would break out of the mold and the box that we'd been living in. And so I love the refusal of the call because it takes a little while in the hero's journey to even see it for what it is. And sometimes you have to go almost past it to start to realize that that's the stage you were in, right?
So good, yes.
But when we're in that process of the refusal of the call, and if we can tolerate or allow the messages coming through us like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, this isn't the right time. If you just wait a little bit longer, right, more things might line up and the path might be clearer. And
I love how you said you used the word kind of misdiagnose earlier. And interestingly, I sort of think what you mean by that is we mistake it or we misdiagnose it as a sign that we shouldn't go. Right? We shouldn't step on that path. We shouldn't move towards that new thing. We shouldn't take the adventure. We shouldn't make that choice. And it's a sign, quote unquote, right? But in the end, what I hope we're doing for our listeners is we're really normalizing this stage.
It's a very important part of the journey. And I want to say in many of aspects of my journey, Lacy, and at one point when I was called to either create a website or build, my business a little bit bigger, make sure my offerings were more available to people, I enrolled in a business school briefly. And one of the things that I learned in that business school, which speaks to this refusal of the call that can help us sometimes for people who will resonate with this, to move beyond all the shutdown mechanisms of the ego that's trying to get us to stop, turn around, right? It wants to get our attention because it's telling us that danger is ahead.
Right.
If you leave what you know, that means you're stepping into the unknown. And the unknown is very scary.
Right.
But this business school gave me this phrase, and she said, start before you're ready.
Oh, I love that.
Because, right, that's also what the ego will do. If it doesn't get you to turn around, it'll at least freeze you.
Right.
And it'll keep you frozen for a minute because it will be saying, you're not ready. Well, what if this timing is better? Or what if, if you need this, you need all these steps before you can start and you haven't properly packed for the journey.
Right.
All the while delaying you from actually taking the journey. And we're going to talk about a lot of things today and in these conversations as we continue to talk about the hero's journey. But a core aspect of the rising hero's journey is movement.
Yes.
And when you're frozen or you're sitting in the middle of a road and you're arguing with yourself. You're wrestling with your ego, you're wrestling your doubts, your fears. It's a very powerful time. And so I think you and we know that refusal of the call is a very critical stage. And what can come to you when you're in that wrestling stage? You're wrestling with yourself, whether to refuse the call, whether you're going to find some courage inside yourself to go further, to keep going, keep moving forward, to start before you're ready, because you have all that you need within you, but you have to learn how to call out those skills and recognize them as they find you. Who appears?
The mentor. And I want to add, there's a certain level of faith that comes into this right here in this stage, because if there's anything you and I have learned, it's to trust in the universe, it's to trust in our path, it's to have faith in our next steps, that no matter what happens, we're okay, and we will learn from whatever happens. So if I step to the right on my path, if it's not meant to be, there will be something that sort of says, nope, this isn't the direction. And then I said, okay, so I'll go left. So you and I have had enough experiences in life to have a deep faith in knowing that life is about this journey. There is nothing in life that is not part of this journey. So we can look at this like from a macro perspective, or we can look at it like a micro perspective in little mini journeys in our life. So I just want to interject the feeling of faith and how, because when you were about to say, who do we meet? I think you and I have had experience after experience that to have faith, because around the next corner, there is going to be an answer or someone like a mentor with the answer.
Exactly. Or the next skill or the next tool or the next breath, whatever it is that you need. And we haven't said it this way, but in many ways, the Rising Hero's journey is a journey of faith. It's a journey of deepening your faith in a process that is far bigger than most can imagine.
Oh my goodness, yes. Well put.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit today about this next stage called meeting the mentor. So meeting the mentor really involves meeting someone with the wisdom and experience to guide you in preparing for this adventure that you're about to sort of step on the path to, right? Someone who can enable you to build the confidence and courage that you need to make the journey. And we're going to talk about in this podcast sort of what does a mentor do and what kind of mentors are there and how do you recognize the mentor. But really what I want to get into the feeling that meeting the mentor is a critical stage, because the truth is the mentor is going to provide our hero, aka us, right, with knowledge, skills, ability, confidence, courage in many different forms and in many different ways. So we'll give some examples today of, obviously some well-known mentors in the movies that can illustrate some of these things. But so the mentor really, I just want to reiterate, provides the hero with training that may look like physical training, mental training, spiritual training, or a combination of all of these things, right? And often the mentor actually accompanies the hero on the journey. So in a lot of the traditional hero journey stories, the mentor is frequently like an older or wiser character that isn't able really to fulfill the heroic role on his or her own anymore. And really, I think because they've already done it, right? They've already journeyed that path. But the mentor doesn't always have to be older. And this is key. The mentor just has to be a little bit farther along the path that we are planning to walk.
So true,
You
right?
know, even if it's just a quarter mile,
Right?
just a little bit ahead.
Right. And they know about this transition from the earlier stages, right? They're the bridge, and they're the ones that know that they've crossed the bridge. Many have crossed the bridge before them, and they're there to help you cross that next bridge.
Yes.
And give you the confidence that you can do it.
That's right. And so it's the mentor who really extends their hand and says, follow me, I will show the way, and I will teach you the skills to walk it yourself.
Right.
You know, very powerful.
Well, and I'll even in my own way walk beside you.
Yes.
Whether that's literally walking beside you or just being available to you as you keep walking, but they're there for consultation. But they are there for you and they are believing in you because they have learned, they've believed in themselves, and their presence in your life, whoever they are, exudes that awareness. They exude the awareness that you have everything inside you that you need.
Well, and that's faith, right? That's the deep faith. They've already cultivated the deep faith, and they can have the faith for you until you've got the faith.
Until you can activate it in yourself.
Right.
Right?
So
it's powerful.
It is very powerful. So let's talk a little bit about just some of the kind of bullet points of what mentors do.
Okay.
You know, they certainly exist to pass on knowledge, right? Like we've talked about, and they may exist to teach you certain skills. They're at their best when they're pushing you, the hero, out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. That's really their role, their job is they're gonna push you out of your comfort zone. But guess what else? They're gonna be right there next to you. You know,
they're a confident catalyst.
Oh, yes.
Right? They're a catalyst of your growth, but they also hold confidence for both of you that this is transformable, that you can step up in these new skills, that you can do these things.
Right. And interestingly, when I was just reminding myself of sort of the archetype of the mentor, I came upon somebody who talked about how mentors typically, they don't coddle, right? So there's a big difference between coddling or enabling. They 150% believe in you, and they 150% believe in the journey, and they have faith in you to make the journey.
Right.
But they're
and
not.
that your challenges and your difficulties are what's going to grow the strength that you need to take the next steps. Whereas coddling or comforting, not to say they can't comfort you too, that their presence won't be comforting at certain times.
Right.
But their role and their specific purpose isn't to just comfort you, because in that respect, and the coddling keeps you stuck and you're not moving forward.
Right.
Then therefore
you're
not
enabling.
Then they're not a mentor.
Right. Exactly. They become an enabler.
Right.
You
or
know?
another role than the mentor truly is. The mentor knows that its job is to help you to keep moving, to keep going in the journey.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And if they're not facilitating your growth, then they're not likely truly the role of the mentor. And there's somebody else that you're going to find that's going to meet you in that journey that you're summoning in. When you're questioning, you're summoning from the universe, I need a little help here.
Yes.
Right? And the universe answers by putting someone in your path who can give you the kind of help you're needing.
Right.
But you might also summon in some comforters and some coddlers and some other things. Also, because early in the journey you're learning the difference.
Right.
You're learning the difference between the coddlers, comforters, and the true mentor.
And you're learning about yourself. You know,
and the power you have
to
be summoning in the help that you need.
Right, because there are many people who are walking the path who with a nice ego would say, "Oh, I prefer a coddler. I prefer an enabler.
I found the help I was looking for."
Right.
It's really cozy. So it's like if they were living in a condo unit right next to the comforter, and on the other side of their condo unit is the coddler, and they'd say, "Look, I asked and my prayers were answered.
Right.
They've been here the whole time. They're my neighbors."
Right.
Right. But none of the three of you in that image, that illustration, are moving.
Right.
You're all still in the same place.
Right.
There's no forward momentum. That's when you might need to recognize, have my feet moved forward even an inch, right? Has my spirit shifted at all? Or am I actually, in fact, in the very same place? And have I tricked myself and deceived myself that I'm moving in this journey? Did I just summon in people? What is that called, Lacy? Is it confirmation bias? Where their bias matches my bias, that I'm wanting to believe that I'm moving and things are really shifting.
Right.
But in fact, we're all in agreement to do nothing.
Right. Yeah, and essentially you're all on the same hamster wheel.
And we all are seeking comfort. The
Right.
mentor is truly a facilitator of your growth. The goal is you're on side A of that bridge and you've got to get to side B.
Right.
And the difference that's really a hallmark of this mentor
Right.
is that you will notice they say some things that do comfort you, that do give you strength. It feels good to be in their presence, but they're asking questions that make you think, that make you grow, that call you outside of your own boxes, that you might be saying how arduous, how difficult, how challenging, how painful, all the emotions that you're having. And the mentor will patiently, confidently, kindly listen, and then also, in turn, ask you a question or say something that moves the energy in you, that facilitates you to grow forward, to move. And there's growth happening in this interaction, in this connection. And again, it's something else that people miss. And sometimes they don't confirm the mentor always until a little further into the journey when they're halfway across the bridge and they feel all those feelings. Because it's not like they're not linear stages, Lacy, where you have stage 1, right? Then you have the call to the adventure. Then you have the refusal of the call. It's not like this is marked in your driveway and on your commute to work. You say, oh, good, I've passed refusal of the call now. Now I'm looking for the mentor.
Right.
It's not identified that way, which is also why it's a journey of faith. You have to learn this language. And if you're in this journey, you're not feeling a mentor right now, well, one of the things that can create some movement is a prayer or an intention to call one in, right?
Yes.
That's highest good for you.
Yes.
And you will recognize that mentor as somebody who is facilitating your growth and facilitating your change.
And sometimes that mentor in that facilitating your growth can be sort of, I don't know, because I know I've mentored, I would say I've mentored a lot of people throughout my career, and especially the men in prison. And it looked something like tough love.
It can look like tough
that's
love.
just one way it can look, is tough love.
And can I say something else that just came to me? Because it's interesting. You talked about that tough love. Again, the mentor can present differently.
And we're going to talk about the different
So we don't
ways.
want to put a box around who the mentor is.
Right.
That would limit who the mentors are that can find you. But just like we have a refusal of the call, it almost feels like there should be another step in here that, Joseph Campbell didn't name, but that I would name, is there can also be a refusal of the mentor.
Yes, absolutely.
So when you have somebody who's stepping up to offer this kind of tough love that knows you're scared, knows you're challenged, knows you're in pain, isn't giving you the answers, but is asking you questions or guiding you in ways that help you to discover your answers. If you're looking for comfort, if you're looking for the status quo, if you're looking to go back to the familiar, right, that mentor is not going to be as appealing to you as that confirmation bias that you have, that you want the neighbor or the friend who's going to tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
And I think I just want to add that in, that there may, for some people, be like, I have passed by a few of those mentors. I don't like how they were talking to me.
Right, exactly.
Right? They are the people that might irritate you.
Right.
They are the people that rub you the wrong way. You had this major problem and they weren't really empathic with you. They didn't really understand the pain you were in, or they wouldn't have said those things to you.
That's the ego talking, right?
Of course, it's offended. The ego can be offended by the mentor.
Right.
And that's also what I want to round the edges of any boxes that anybody's trying to put the mentor in. Allow a highest good mentor to enter your path.
Oh, I like that.
Right? And the highest good may not be the form or the person or the messenger you think you need. But oftentimes, if that's your intention, that it's a highest good mentor, they're in there.
Well, and I want to just jump in and delineate here too, just one distinguishing factor, because the difference between a mentor and a teacher. Okay, so in some ways, I feel like what you're saying too is, we all have teachers in our life. In fact, to me, everyone is a teacher, right? Everyone is mirroring to me something I may need to see about myself. Okay. So a mentor has a slightly different energetic
It's a
feel.
very special role the mentor plays because its primary purpose is that movement. It's to help you move beyond your comfort zone with a level of maybe borrowed confidence.
Ooh,
right?
That's a good term.
Right? Because it's that confident catalyst.
Right.
It is there. Its sole purpose is to keep you moving and expanding.
And the mentor is a companion, may be a companion on your journey. And a teacher may not be a companion on your journey. A teacher is there to maybe impart something sort of in a different way, but
the teacher is not necessarily invested in that forward movement.
Correct. Thank you. Yes.
Right. The teacher is giving you skills and giving you awareness and giving you lessons, maybe some tools for you to consider, right? A teacher wants to see you learn, but learning doesn't even necessarily, you can have your feet planted in the same place for 50 years and be learning. If you're learning in the old ways, you might never move. You might not ever leave your house. You could have your whole house could be full of bookshelves and books on every shelf, solid. And you might have read every book in your own library, and you might not have taken the first step. So teachers are fantastic because they're giving you knowledge, they're giving you information, they're giving you things that can prepare you for the journey or that can help expand you. And I'm not saying the teachers don't expand, because they can. But for truly the person, I'm getting a little more specific about the rising hero in this journey. There are a lot of people who are seeking change who find ways to go nowhere.
Right. So true.
And even, I don't want to offend anybody, but even therapy at times, just the old school kinds of therapists where you can go weekly or bi-weekly or every day if you want to for years and years and years to therapy, because that's another one of those comfort cushions in your life.
Yes.
There is therapy that's productive. I understand that. But in the old school ways that people have sought to create change in their life, therapy became a big thing, and it became quite an industry.
Well, and to be honest, I don't think people went to therapy to create change in their life. I think they go to therapy to solve a problem or to, and that's where they get stuck, because it's not about forward movement.
And the thing about the hero's journey is you are moving forward.
Yes.
Right? You are progressing. You are expanding. You are becoming newer versions of yourself.
Yes.
That is a goal in the hero's journey, that you are on a quest to expand beyond something that's different than the box you were previously living.
Right.
And the mentor is the very specific role of somebody who is playing that role. They're not a peer. They're not a friend. They might come in the forms of those people, but you will hear the mentor in them if that's who it is in your life that's speaking mentor messages.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's why it's really important to get out of the box of who you think the mentor might be, and you let the wisdom of the universe, you let the wisdom of God, you let the wisdom of your faith present who that mentor needs to be.
And I just want to jump in right here, Marie, and say that, truly mentors can take all forms, right? So just to sort of use what you just said in example, to give an example, of course, was Yoda, right? I mean, Yoda is nothing like what Luke Skywalker expected in The Empire Strikes Back. He expected a great warrior as a mentor, a Jedi master, kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? But instead, he gets a tiny green Muppet.
Seriously.
Right? And that tiny green Muppet is constantly contradicting him and challenging Luke throughout all of his training, right? And
acting anything like the mentor or the trainer that Luke is looking for.
Right. And I'm sure they didn't necessarily go into this in the film, but that Luke's ego in his temper tantrums and in the different scenes, is saying, I'm going to listen to this little green Muppet with big ears? Like, no, I don't think so. So he had to really shift, right? And really, I think kind of the real climax that demonstrates that shift is sort of towards the end of the movie, where Luke can't, do you remember he can't lift the X-Wing ship out of the swamp? Right? And he's complaining that it's too heavy. And of course, with a sigh and a little grunt, Yoda very calmly lifts this enormous craft up onto the land without so much as a sweat. Right?
I can tell you that in a book that I wrote, called The Knight and His Armored Heart, that one of the lines in that book that came through me when I was writing that book is that size has nothing to do with being wise. Right?
I
and
love
there
that.
you see it. There you see it in Yoda.
Right, exactly.
And so, but there's all these preconceived notions of what the mentor looks like, who they are.
Right.
Right. And that's a mistake. I don't like talking about mistakes, but I would encourage our listeners to consider letting the mentor be who the mentor is. Right. And recognizing them when
and not
they're in front of
labeling,
you.
not judging, not creating it out of your own story. Right. It's just, you're really feeling that this is somebody who could show me the way in a way that will force me to grow and to take the steps I need to. Right. You know, I mean,
can I say something here?
Of course.
And I don't know if this is a direction you wanted to go, but I can say Jesus is another example of somebody who came to mentor this world in what a connection with source, a connection with faith, a deeper spirituality than they had practiced. But he didn't come in the form that people expected to be as the Son of God, right?
Right.
And whether people in their faith believe he was the Son of God, whether he was a teacher, a prophet, whoever he was, when he came as that Messiah-like figure, few on the planet, especially in his own timeline, could recognize that that's who that was.
Right.
And so he didn't come because people had heard that this, the Messiah, the second coming, this being was coming to liberate them from all of their slavery and all the challenges that they've been toiling away for generations. And some people missed it. Some people couldn't see that energy, at least, or see the value in his teachings, and then therefore became some of the condemners and the judgers of him. And that's the refusal of the mentor.
Right.
It's like Luke Skywalker refused Yoda as his mentor.
Or he at least resisted it for a while.
He at least resisted it.
Yeah.
But it is in many stories where people the help is there and they can't recognize it. And it's the mentor, because the mentor stretches you. The mentor believes that you can go the distance across the bridge into the next phase of your journey.
Right.
It knows you're here to do this, and it knows that its role to help you with this. Often the mentors don't yield. Right? They will stay the course of what they know is theirs to do.
Right. And they do it in all different kinds of ways.
Different kinds of ways.
Right. So
But it's up, I just want to say it's up to the rising hero in that journey to keep bouncing into the different aspects of the mentor, a little like a pinball sometimes, and ultimately realize, and then they might go back, then they might bounce from the mentor back into one of their friends and say, can you believe so-and-so said this is their advice? Like, what good is that? And their friends are like, oh, I know, right? And you've got they're going to listen and join with you and align with what you are saying. But that's not what you really want. You already have the familiar in your life. You already have friends in your life that will keep you exactly where you are. What the soul is really seeking is the expansion. And as frustrated as you get with that mentor, whoever that is, you will find your way back to that mentor, or another mentor will cross your path when you're more ready for the mentor.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't get to avoid the mentor.
Right.
You may turn away from the mentor, or like I said earlier, you may refuse the mentor briefly.
Or
right?
you may not recognize the disguise the mentor is wearing.
You may not recognize that disguise. Right? Sometimes it's more obvious, and sometimes it's more, is the word covert? Sometimes it's more hidden. Regardless, that mentor is in all of our paths and in different stages of our paths. Every time we're about to grow, a mentor is provided.
Yeah, yeah. One of the big sort of characteristics I think a lot of times of mentors is that they have this kind of balance between acquired physical skills and existential knowledge. So if we move into some examples, like Morpheus in the movie The Matrix, who he's fighting Neo. I don't know if you remember this, but he's actually fighting Neo while he's teaching him the nature of the Matrix, right? So he's teaching him physical skill within the experience of the Matrix itself. Or even Dumbledore in Harry Potter, who really teaches Harry about the power of love while standing up to Voldemort's most powerful magic. Right. So there is,
and they don't try and eliminate your experiences because they know you have to have those experiences in order to grow.
Yes.
So they let you have the pitfalls. They let you make the mistakes. They let you struggle and be challenged in the journey. But they're there, steady, like you said, Lacy. They're walking next to you. In some way, they're right there with you. And they know that you are going to master these skills.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They know it.
Yes.
Even when you don't know it.
No, it's 100. They believe for you until you believe.
Right, exactly.
It's the definition of faith,
Right.
It's very powerful.
Very powerful.
And I feel like I could even get emotional because, you and I are both we've been mentored. We've mentored each other. And we have a lot of people in our lives that we are mentors for. And there's nothing more powerful in this world than to be able to walk beside somebody across the bridge, you know? So.
Right. And hold out your hand to them.
Yes.
Right. As they're like climbing their own mountain. Right. And they just need that last.
Yeah. I mean, you're not doing it for them.
No.
But you're right there with them. You're holding them in a sense as they do it for themselves.
Right.
And that is the greatest gift and the biggest purpose of life for, I think, you and I at this.
And there are a lot of healers and teachers who teachers can elevate sometimes their role as a teacher into the role of mentor. Sometimes we're both a mentor and a healer, or a mentor and a teacher.
Right.
We're not just one thing in our life, and these aren't just, like I said, linear stages.
Yes.
We need to give ourselves permission to be so much more.
Yes.
And in the hero's journey and in these conversations, people who are listening to us can hear, wow, I never saw my life that way. I never saw my mentors that way. I didn't understand them in this way. But when we expand our consciousness and we expand what we're willing to see and what we're willing to perceive, we can see that maybe there have been mentors and messengers all around us, or maybe we have yet to meet that mentor. It's going to be unique and different for all of us. But to be open to those experiences is really powerful.
It is. And I think that's a really nice segue into talking a little bit about kind of the different kinds of mentors, the forms and the approaches that a mentor can take.
Okay.
And again, I just want to reiterate a point that you've made several times already today, that this is not a linear process. This is not a labeling process. It doesn't always exist in the forms that we're going to talk about. But let's give some examples of kind of the forms and approaches that.
Right, because it's really important. What we're talking about is giving people a language so that when they do see it, they can say, oh, that's a such and such kind of mentor. I can see that. And when we can language what we see, now it's getting deeper and deeper into our awareness, and it's becoming part of our lives.
Right.
When we're missing the language and we're missing the awareness, oftentimes these things pass us by. Right. And we say, a little help here, and we don't see it coming.
Right.
Right? Because we haven't trained our vision to see it. We don't know about intention. We don't know about perception. We don't know about the
we haven't looked to learn
beyond.
We haven't looked to learn beyond what we can see, which is what you're talking about, right?
Right.
We have to train ourselves to look beyond the obvious, to look beyond what we can see in front of us.
And I know we're going to go into what you just described, but a great example of that is, again, Luke Skywalker, when he's being trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi, when they first meet, and he gives him a lightsaber, and he says, I don't know what I'm doing. And there's that, I don't know what that gadget thing is.
It's like a virtual reality helmet,
it's like a virtual, right? And he had to use the Force. And he's like, I don't know how to use the Force.
Yeah, what's the Force?
What's the Force?
Right.
Right? But Obi-Wan is not going to do it for him.
Right.
And he's going to let him struggle with that, but Luke does tap into the Force. And once you're touched by that, once you have an experience with that, okay, now you're on the path. And then Luke Skywalker still had a long way to go to fulfill his purpose and his destiny and the things he needed to do. But the hero's journey became much more clear to him that there's value in this mentor I'm standing next versus being a senile old man.
Right.
Right? Because that's the other thing you can say. They're just crazy.
Yeah, you find a way to invalidate or dismiss the experience.
Which is the ego saying, okay, so we're not taking the journey, right?
Right.
There's nothing here for you.
Right.
But when you have that experience, it opens up worlds upon worlds for you to grow.
Right.
Okay, so please.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the different forms a mentor can take. So The first form I want to talk about is the guide, right? The guide. So some mentors end up leading their hero through sort of dangerous and unfamiliar territory. So a great example of this is Gandalf, right? In the Fellowship of the Ring. He serves that purpose for a little while. He helps guide his sort of following through the dark forests and through the different areas of the countryside and through the hardships, the mountains, the tunnels, things like that. He's helping them move through dangerous and unfamiliar territory. And of course, we'll probably bring up Dumbledore a million times, but Dumbledore is often this kind of guide for Harry throughout all of the series of movies. So really the guide shares wisdom and guidance without necessarily telling the hero what to do, right? So,
right.
As a coach or as coaches, I think that we help guide people through powerful questioning, which is what you brought up earlier. We ask our clients or the people we're mentoring, well, what would it take for this to happen? Or if you had 3 wishes, what would they be? Or if this was your child, what would you tell them?
Right.
So we may know the answer as the guide, but we are trying to empower the hero to come to that answer on their own.
Yes.
And that a lot of times is what the guide does. I also see the guide or the coach as sharing valuable resources that the hero can sort of interpret in their own way and learn from in their own way. So when I give somebody a resource, say I tell them to watch a film or I give them a book to read, I don't necessarily say, now this is what I want you to take from it, right? I say, tell me what you learned from it.
You're not going to give them a test and make sure they master what Lacy thinks is important.
Right.
They're having their own experience and they're going to come back and share what was really poignant and meaningful to them.
Right.
Every part about this whole journey is about you.
The hero.
You, the hero.
Right.
That's the most important thing. What is your experience?
Right. It's not about the mentor. It's not about the people that you love in your life. It's not about any of that.
Those are characters in your story.
Yes.
But you are the hero of your journey, and it's up to you when somebody gives you a book or a film or something, when that mentor gives you a task or something, but to experience and to solve and to figure out or to experience. That is for you to experience and then come and bring back the wisdom of that experience or the challenge of that experience to grow some more.
Right, exactly. And, as a mentor myself, the mentor doesn't have an agenda. And that's really important. The mentor doesn't have an agenda. There's no attachment and there's no agenda for this hero. Because in the end, it isn't about me, it's about them. And if I've had many people where I've given resources to or homework to or things like that, and I never hear about it again. And that's okay, right?
Right. That's where they are in the journey.
That's where they are.
Right.
Exactly.
And they'll either come back to you and find you again and say, I think she was giving me some real jewels that I missed. Or another mentor, more appropriate for them at a new stage, will find them and they'll get the message a different way. And the mentor knows that.
Right.
The mentor knows that they have a task that they have to meet and they have to grow through, and they're going to grow through it one way or the other.
Right.
And the mentor doesn't bear responsibility for your growth.
Exactly. That is such a big piece.
Right? The mentor believes in your growth, but is not responsible for your growth. And that is what a true mentor is. It doesn't get energetically and emotionally involved in whether you thrive and succeed and achieve your goal in that journey, that particular bridge and aspect, or whether you don't. It just knows that you will.
Right. Yeah, that faith. I mean, at some point you will.
Right.
So it may be in the next 1 to 5 years. It may be in 30 years, or it may be in your next lifetime.
Well, and I'm going to take it back to the spiritual piece of this, because for some of our listeners, that's a big piece.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that comes up.
And isn't God the ultimate mentor?
Right.
Because people pray and call out all the time in times of change, and God often will provide the things that are needed if the intention and the energies match and people draw into their experience what they need. God provides the miracles for those things to happen. But a lot of times God knows that if you need to learn about forgiveness, God's just not going to poof, inspire you from the inside out that you now have
been anointed.
You've been anointed with
Right,
forgiveness.
right.
No, God will help you create scenarios where you need to forgive.
Right.
And that is the ultimate mentor. And
so good.
we're learning this.
Right.
We've lost the language of what our lives are really here about. And then we misassign, we judge, we devalue, we misdiagnose, we misinterpret, we do a lot of things because we don't understand this is what it's all about.
Right.
And it's all about our growth and our evolvement and our strengthening as the hero of these journeys that becomes an avatar ultimately, like a spiritual guru or the elders of civilizations, eventually. And then there's, I believe there are beings in spirit who guide people's journeys who are still physically incarnated. I mean, there's worlds upon worlds that this can grow into. But that concept of we're not always given, I asked for this and you gave me this.
Right.
And then we're disappointed at what we get. But
Right.
we don't understand that what's given is typically the next thing that you needed.
That's exactly right.
And you have to grow to understand what the gift was that was needed.
Right. Beautiful. Yeah. Well said. Okay, so we talked about the guide. So now we're going to go another way that the mentor sort of shows up is the trainer, right? So think Karate Kid, right?
Yes.
So the Matrix, Karate Kid, Remember the Titans, Rocky, right? These are all people who their mentor was sort of a trainer. The trainer may be a former hero who failed or suffered an injury that prevented him or her from success, but they learn so much about what to do and what not to do along that way, along their own journey, right? So the trainer often is helping the hero really build their knowledge base and their skill set by doing, right?
It's really a skill set that they're helping you to acquire.
Right. I mean, it's interesting. When I think of Karate Kid and I think of, Mr. Miyagi, right?
Yes,
you remember?
yes.
And the wax on, wax off. And,
right.
he's sort of through the doing, wax on, wax off, he's teaching and mentoring the kid in patience, right? In consistency.
Right. Well, and then he was doing the moves that he was going to have to master all the while. He thought it was senseless and he was just like his servant at a certain point. He gets frustrated with the mentor and thinks, you've taught me nothing, when in fact he taught him everything.
Right. Exactly.
Right? That is, again, a great illustration of the trainer.
So the trainer's often about the doing and teaching through the doing, right? Mm-hmm. Another place we might see a mentor show up is more in a parental role, like a mother or father role. So a parental mentor is kind of a more loving role than the more traditional mentor characters. They often function as authority figures with whom the hero may conflict with as he searches for his own identity. Right?
Yeah.
So like an example of that might be Tony Stark and Peter Parker in Spider-Man Homecoming, where Stark isn't Parker's actual father, but he functions as one, providing Peter with lessons and wisdom that guide him to true heroism. So a lot of times we'll see in the movies or a book this sort of more maternal or paternal figure that often isn't actually their mother or father, right?
It's interesting that you say that because sometimes I think and it's not always the case, but sometimes a mother or a father figure is too close to the hero in their journey. There's other tensions in that relationship.
100%.
And then we borrow from somebody else that's close in our family circle or in our circle of friends. And I was thinking, too, about Avatar, The Last Airbender. I don't know if people listening to this podcast are familiar with that show, but there's a son named Zuko. And he has a lot of conflict with his father, right? And his father's really intense and kind of the villain of the show. But his uncle Iroh, the brother of the Fire Lord, is very connected with Zuko. And he ends up mentoring him into being ultimately the better man, the better person, the better being that he was always meant to be.
Great example.
Right?
Yeah.
And his father was never going to help him bloom into that amazing
Right.
version of himself. His uncle was the one with the skills and the knowledge.
Right.
And he is by his side through the whole thing.
Right. Right. And
very
actually,
powerful.
I sort of see his father more as a teacher in the teacher role of mirroring to Zuko the anger that
Right.
he perpetuated in him,
Right.
So I know we could talk about that series
That should be a
forever, I know.
whole podcast series. That's my
Yeah.
favorite show.
Maybe we'll move into that next.
Right? Because
Okay.
it shows the hero's journey.
Yeah.
It's the
Oh, in
avatar who has to
multiple
accept
ways.
himself to be the avatar he is, right?
Right.
That's a lot of that journey. I hadn't thought about it that way, but
Yeah.
it may relate. So stay tuned for more podcasts about that.
That's right. Okay, so a fourth form that a mentor might show up in, and this is often very common, is kind of the guru or the priest or the monk, right? So just as a hero, which is of course always us that we're talking about, just as a hero needs physical training and guidance, we also need spiritual leadership. And you alluded to this earlier. So, all heroic journeys are dualistic in nature. They're multi-layered. This is, again, not a linear progression, not a linear black and white experience. So the hero's journey is very dualistic in nature, in that an emotional or spiritual journey often parallels the physical journey.
And can I say,
Yeah.
oftentimes it's our physical journey, what we can see, what we can touch, what we can taste.
Right.
It can bind us into the very same life we might claim that we're ready to grow beyond.
Right.
And so when you have this priest, monk, guru, spiritual mentor, this spiritual guide, it helps us lift off the page in our own stories where we can only see a few steps ahead of ourselves. But with the spiritual perspective, we can see miles ahead and start to see a much bigger picture for our life, our purpose, our skills, our gifts. And without that perspective, without that kind of mentor coming into our life, even if we're growing, sometimes we don't grow in the ways that we need to fulfill what is ours to do here. And so it's a vital role that spiritual mentor provides.
Yeah, in some ways I was just thinking about Disney, when I can think of some spiritual mentors in some of the Disney films, like even Kung Fu Panda, right?
Yes.
They have a number of spiritual mentors in Kung Fu Panda, and they
Right.
function really just as spiritual mentors, but that's most of the time the mentor functions as the trainer, the guru, the maternal figure. They may a mentor can function as all of these.
Yes.
And then sometimes there's
It's very specific role, but that was Oogway.
Oogway. Yeah. Yeah.
Oogway was really the spiritual master teacher who had been leading that village and the consciousness of that realm in that movie anyway for like a really long time. He was a really old
Turtle. Right.
turtle, right? But then he passes on.
And we're going to talk about that, so don't move into that, because we're going to talk about what happens with the mentor as one option. So,
Okay.
But another one is the, I don't know if you remember Pocahontas, but Grandmother Willow, the tree, do you remember? She sort of played kind of a more physically frail or delicate being, but was so spiritually mature and wise. And so, and the hero has to take herself to the tree to kind of gain the wisdom, right?
And you have to spend time in the energy of that spiritual presence.
Right.
It's often actually just the close relationship that people open and expand to a higher vision and a greater perception than otherwise we normally do when we're more trapped in our human consciousness, right? Just doing the doing of the daily life.
Right.
So it's nice if you have the trainer in a mentor and also this priest or spiritual guru or this, the spiritual presence of a mentor. It might be in one person, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The trainer to me was very isolated in giving specific tasks and mastery of certain skills, but the spiritual mentor complements that by bringing the bigger perceptions, right? The bigger understanding of the why we do the things we do, how we are in existence, who we are as spiritual beings, right?
Right.
Beyond people say
the flesh,
the meat suits.
The human,
I don't like
right.
to say meat suits, but I know physical vessels, I
Right.
would say.
Right.
That we're a whole consciousness and energy, and we have lots of abilities beyond what we even understand ourselves to be, which it's the big piece that invites us to go beyond our physical limitations and our conceptual limitations of us as human beings. And we enter that state that my friend Renee calls the divine human being. Right? It facilitates us from being that human self into a divine human understanding of ourselves that we were always meant to merge into and become.
Yes, I love
Very
that.
powerful.
Very powerful. So our last sort of form or category we're going to talk about is the counselor. And mentors don't have to function as somebody who is in the journey for the long haul. The mentor can be a casual source of knowledge and inspiration. They're like a companion, but they don't actually come along for the journey. So the counselor may appear sort of briefly in your life, off and on, and serve up some needed wisdom, just at the right time.
Right, they kind of show up.
Yeah, they kind of show up here and there. Like, they pop in and pop out.
This reminds me of? I have two thoughts. First of all, it's in the Wayne Dyer movie, The Shift. And the key person, and I won't give a spoiler away, but somebody that's critical in that film, he's like the groundskeeper, and then he's the guy that plays the piano, and he's the gardener, and he shows up in all these aspects of this spiritual retreat center that a lot of people visit. And a lot of the characters in that movie, it's a movie about the life of Wayne Dyer, right? And his teachings anyway, The Shift.
Yeah.
And so, but the people who show up to this spiritual center are caught up in their very human lives, and they're bumbling around being their bumbling human selves, and they're struggling and they're challenged. But there's this character that is in the garden just at the right moment when one of them is really struggling.
And he drops one little pearl of wisdom.
And it changes their life.
And then he moves on.
Right. And they don't necessarily have repeat moments with that character.
Right.
But it was just, that was the perfect
That's a
moment.
Great example.
And then he's playing the piano one time late at night where most people are off sleeping or doing something else, but somebody who's struggling stumbles in and listens to this person playing the piano, and then they have this meaningful conversation, and that activates something in them for their journey, right? Great
examples. The other one I want to bring up is Hagrid in Harry Potter.
Yes.
So Hagrid is not, he's actually not in the films all that much. But when he shows up, he's there to give Harry and Hermione and Ron just the little piece of information they know to take whatever next step.
And interestingly, he is like a cloaked mentor where you don't really see, because Hagrid also makes his own mistakes.
Right.
But he also has a strength of character, that he still has a loyalty and he knows things that they don't know.
Right.
And so this is a lesson also in discernment of opening your vision, seeing deeper into the people in your life, that there could be hidden mentors around you that you haven't even seen. Right. And when you can find them in a Hagrid, or you find them in the gardener in the Shift movie, or in other roles that you see throughout films of these people who sprinkle this wisdom. I was thinking Evan Almighty was the other one.
Yes.
Where God is the mentor that shows up, but shows up in very unexpected circumstances to give a nugget of wisdom to help them in the task that they're facing in that film.
Yes.
Yeah. And he doesn't do it for them. He says, no, there's an arc to build in Evan Almighty for people who know about that film, or if you don't know about it, it's worth seeing. It's kind of a modern day telling of the story of Noah.
Right.
And one guy is called to be kind of a modern day Noah because God knows that these events are going to happen and he wants him to play a role. So he delivers a whole lot of lumber to his house. and there's a hammer and a few pegs or something, and he has to figure it out. And God expects that Evan is going to figure it out. There is this faith that he will do what he's there to do. And so it's very powerful when you see somebody believing in you bigger than you can believe in yourself in that moment.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, so this has been so great. I love covering all the different, these are just a few examples of the way the mentor can show up. I do think it's important to mention that especially when it comes to feature films and books and things like that there is kind of this fate of the mentor. The mentor's role is really a fateful one when you think about it. The mentor is not going to be in your life, right? Most of the time, the mentor is not going to be in your life day in and day out for the rest of your life. Because at some point, you've got to do this thing on your own. You've got to slay the dragon on your own. You've got to ride the bike without training wheels.
Right.
You're gonna.
The mentor doesn't slay the dragon.
Right.
You do.
Right. You've got to do it on your own.
Right.
And so at some point, the mentor will kind of gradually sort of pull themselves out of your experience as you move forward with your newfound skills and knowledge and wisdom, and then truly you become a mentor, right? In the end, after that.
Right.
But there is, and I guess think about it, the mentor is often the character with sort of this abounding knowledge and skill. So why then is he or she not the hero, And the reason is because in your journey, they've already done it. They've already been their hero. They've already mastered their journey.
Right.
So in your story, they're your mentor, right?
Right.
Most heroes' journey stories are a lot about the young protagonists, who are coming of age as they progress on their journey. Like we've already mentioned Luke Skywalker and Harry Potter, Katniss Everdeen, even stories like the Odyssey and the Lord of the Rings, which feature these sort of middle-aged protagonists. They have mentor characters who are much older and wiser than heroes, right? But in order for the heroic journey to work, right, just like we said, in other words, for the hero to be the one who faces down the ultimate evil or who masters for the hero to master whatever it is they need to master, the mentor cannot be there to help. Ooh, I just gave myself chills and I want to cry.
Right.
Right?
Well, in fact, it's like the Harry Potter really illustrates this for people who've seen those films. But in the times he's facing his nemesis, right? The dark villain that's trying to kill him, end his life. While he has Dumbledore as his mentor, Dumbledore is not there to save him. He has to face Voldemort.
Right.
And Voldemort's single task, his key focus is destroying Harry Potter.
Right.
And I love, there's in one of the films, I can't remember if it's in the first or second film, but he's battling Voldemort again, and he summons in Fawkes, the Phoenix. Right? And I remember later, and always, I love in the Harry Potter films, after Harry does what he has to do, Dumbledore inspires him. Dumbledore empowers him, right? And Dumbledore has faith in him, but always Harry is on his own, maybe with a couple of his friends, but it's still Harry that has to face one-on-one with Voldemort many, many times. And then after he survives those experiences because he steps up as his own hero because he must.
Right.
He is the only one who can do these things.
That's right.
At the end of those films, he's always debriefing with Dumbledore, who's basically saying, like, I didn't send Fawkes to you.
You did.
You summoned Fawkes, and only by having, like, extreme faith, only having, like, that deep heroic courage and summoning in, you summon, and deep loyalty. I think that's why Fawkes gets summoned, because he shows deep loyalty even at the expense of his own life as the hero of his own story. Maybe when he looks like he's on his last legs, Harry Potter I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And Voldemort, it must be doing something to offend and tarnish who Dumbledore is, right? To devalue him in some way.
Right.
I think Harry summons in just those last ounces of strength he has a fierce loyalty to Dumbledore. And it's not Dumbledore who sends in the Phoenix, it's Harry who summons it by his courageous act, his courageous faith.
Yeah.
His brave faith in a moment that you would think many people wouldn't have the stamina for.
Yeah.
And he is his own hero again and again and again in that show.
Well, and often in a lot of these movies, what the fate of the mentor doesn't have to be this way, but the fate of the mentor is actually death, right? The mentor often dies, but if you also pay attention, they don't die for long because they are come back and they are spiritually, right, from the other side. they are guiding, they are...
Right. They connect with them in a different level of consciousness, so they never leave.
Right.
They don't ever really, the mentor doesn't really go away.
Right.
But they're not the one who has to take the action, who grow the faith. It's the hero that has to do it, but that mentor is always there.
Right. I was just thinking that, like, practically every dead mentor I can think of finds a way to come back and assist the hero from spirit. Gandalf comes back, Dumbledore comes back, Mufasa from the Lion King, right? Comes back, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So, these
and in the Avatar, The Last Airbender, all of his previous avatars, he realizes he can connect with all of them. And what wisdom did they use to transcend the challenges of their day?
Right.
Right.
Right. And we're not gonna talk too long about this, but I do think if you are somebody who believes in sort of the other side, because you and I have had experiences where we've had mentors guiding us from the other side, and this could be a spiritual, this could be a relative who's crossed over. This could be an ascended master.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if everybody else believes this, but I certainly believe that Jesus is an ascended master and guiding the people on this planet every day. That's why we pray to him, at some level. Right. So the mentor can be a physical presence, and then oftentimes the mentor has to kind of step back into the sidelines, or sort of pass away and be guiding from
a bigger
right.
guide to you than what they can provide in life. That's
right.
also what happens. They become a bigger guide to you than they could in their presence in your physical life.
Right.
And they also show you that their power and their wisdom transcends death. Right? That's the ultimate mentor. That's another ultimate mentor, is that their mentorship gets so much bigger that it transcends death.
Right.
And so in a lot of these characters, you can really see that. And we are also these beings too. We're all evolving into becoming more of the divinity, really, that we truly are, this spiritual essence that also lives beyond time and space.
Right. When we can tap into the energy of the universe and all of the ascended masters and heroes that have come before us, right, that are imbuing us with their wisdom, if we can open to that. Right. That's a whole nother... month's worth of podcasting.
And it's very powerful to have that presence inside us.
Right. So Marie, this has been awesome. I just want to round it out by kind of saying, and this is sort of a no-brainer, but I think we all need a mentor. Few heroes can rise to the challenge of their adventure, of their journey, without some form of guidance. I mean, let's be real about that, and this is true in the movies, and this is also true in real life. So no one rises to prominence in their life without a significant investment from a mentor who cares enough to invest time and energy in their personal evolution, in their journey.
And people can relate to that as simply just at the basic human level of people who grow to become great athletes or great performers, or somebody that you can tell they had people who invested time and energy and resources into cultivating their gift. We can connect with that on a human level.
Right.
Well, they've been training for that for 15 years, right?
Right.
People who go to the Olympics, for instance. But when you spiritualize that conversation, right, when you take it to a higher level, and you're on the rising hero's journey, it's a physical journey, but it's on all levels. It's a mental journey, it's a spiritual journey, it's an emotional journey, and it's a physical journey. It's all of these things. And we can't go the distance truly in that journey and become the mentors that we're meant to be, right? To pay it forward, to give this wisdom and this confident catalyzing that the mentors do.
Right.
Unless we have mentors in our journey.
Right.
And so it is something that through time has been helping people in their hero's journeys. And that's why we also have the myths that Joseph Campbell studied, and he extracted the wisdom of the stages of the journey, instead of it being haphazard or, oh, look, only that one person way over there got to have that amazing journey, but the rest of us, we're just mediocre. We're just doing life and getting by. No, what you realize is there's mentors, and that process is in all of our journeys, all of our lives. All of us have it. We're in a hero's journey now. If you're listening to this podcast, you are in the Rising Heroes journey now. And we've said before, and I'll just say it again as we round out, whether this is exciting or daunting for you, you don't go around the hero's journey story arc once. You do it again and again.
Right.
Because you grow deeper and deeper and expand, because we're designed to be a match to the infinite, which means we're always expanding too. So it's not like you go around the circle of life and that's it, over, finished. No, you find new ways to grow, new ways to learn, new ways to expand. And if we can be a voice to that empowers people in their journeys, that's really, really important. That's part of our mission here at Whole Soul School and Foundation. And more, we have this much larger vision of being a broadcasting company where you hear from Lacy and I in the Fireside Chats, but there's many more messengers of the hero's
journey. Many more heroes. And many more mentors.
Many more, right?
Right.
And there could be no end to the Rising Heroes journey for people, because this is what it's all about, and particularly at this time on our planet with so much challenge, right? So much suffering, so much pain and confusion right now. We are here to be a voice that believes in the power of the rising hero within all of us. And as we all awaken to that, we don't have to suffer and struggle and be in pain any longer, right? We each just do the next thing that is ours to do. That may not mean that we save millions of people. It might be that we help a neighbor or we mentor somebody who comes into our experience, because we know with confidence a little bit more than the person in front of us who's not believing in themselves, who doesn't know that they can acquire the skills or that they have it within to go the distance. So I want to thank you, Lacy, for joining me
Marie.
today.
This was awesome. Yeah.
Meet the mentor.
Yeah.
And I also want to just put in a little plug for another podcast I'm going to be releasing about the same time as releasing this one. So if our listeners have made it this far in the conversation, look for a new Transformation Talks podcast where Lacy and I are talking with our friend Jeff Jones. And he is, in fact, sharing a story of mentoring.
Right.
Look at that coincidence. Are there really coincidences?
No.
I don't think so. So anyway, we invite people to join us in that. Jeff has much more to share, and we have many more messengers, but he shares a very powerful experience that he recently had, and we felt that the world needed to also hear that. So we want to invite you to visit our website at www.wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. You can find us on social media looking for Whole Soul School or Whole Soul School and Foundation. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on a number of social media platforms, and we post inspirational posts all month long in the forms of quotes and inspirational poems from our very own Flower Diamond, who writes mystic poetry for us. And I would invite you to visit us at Bonfire if you're inspired to buy some apparel for you or family members you know and love, and just continue to join our intention for growing these messages and empowering people in the journey, because I think we have, in some ways, sometimes there's a disempowered energy going on in our world right now. And I think those of us that can, unite in the intention and the faith that the power always rests within all of us.
Yes.
And we can be kind of a conscious mentor, like through our consciousness, the audience here at Whole Soul School and Foundation. And that's what we want to continue to seed in these conversations. And I want to thank everybody for joining us and holding that intention. And
I want to thank our donors. I'd ask you to visit our website if you're interested in supporting our work. We've got people who are sustainer donors who repeatedly give on a regular basis, which is tremendously helpful. And we've got one-time donors, which is also tremendously helpful. No donation is too big or too small. And sort of we look at it as you're paying into the energy of this sort of
launching more of this bigger vision.
Yeah, and a
lives.
unifying and unity consciousness,
right?
In these messages.
Yes.
So thank you, Marie.
Thank you, and I second that. Thank you to all of our supporters in all the ways that people support us with their intention, their prayers, positively visioning, people's gratitude and their financial gifts, all of it, and participation, the people who join us in these podcasts and share their time and their stories, their insights, very powerful.
Yes.
So we will see you again in September 2021 with a new podcast from Fireside Chats and hopefully a few others in some other podcast categories. And it's amazing how busy people's lives are. So catching up with our guests and syncing up for these podcasts, but we are an expansion that is in motion.
That's right.
So we are expanding as the consciousness is expanding. And we'll see you next month. And until then, blessings, everyone.